Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to our How to Be a Psychic Medium virtual retreat. I'm your host, Marta the Medium, and I'm so honored you're here. For those of you who know me, you will understand why having Karen K here means so much. Nature has always been one of my greatest teachers and sources of strength, grounding, connecting with the earth, the seasons, the elements is such a vital part of my own mediumship practice. It keeps me aligned, clear, and deeply embodied in this work. And truthfully, if it weren't for my children needing to go to school, I would probably be living deep in the woods somewhere completely off grid, surrounded by trees, bird songs, and stillness. I so relate to that wild rooted magic, of course, with just enough internet signal to hold Zoom readings. That's why I was absolutely overjoyed when Karen said yes to joining us. Her energy, her work, and her connection to the fairy realms and the natural world are so beautifully aligned with what I feel this retreat is all about. Reconnecting with your intuition, your truth, and the living spirit all around. So today I'm thrilled to introduce our special guest, Karen Kay, best-selling Hay House author and fairy whisperer. Karen Kay connects to the elemental realms, bringing through ancient wisdom from fairies, mermaids, and unicorns into our human realm. Karen is a passionate nature lover. Her friendship with the fairies began as a young child in her grandmother's garden, where she used to collect rose petals to make perfume for the flower fairies. She's related to the renowned fairy poet and author Walter de la Mare. This is a far cry from her former life as a BBC news editor. Karen is a regular guest on TV and radio. She's an event planner and a founder of the Three Wishes Fairy Festival and fairy events in Glastonbury, UK. She's also the founder and editor-in-chief of FAE Magazine. Karen, welcome. It's such an honor to have you with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I am so happy to be with you in this very magical virtual space. Thank you.
Karen, your friendship with the fairies began when you were a young child collecting rose petals in your grandmother's garden. Could you share a little bit more about that magical beginning and also how you managed to keep that connection alive as you grew older? Because so many children have intuitive abilities and connections to unseen realms, but they often shut down by the time they become teenagers or adults. I would love to
Yeah,
hear
so
your story.
I don't know why it stayed with me. I have no idea. It's just I remained open to that, and it's I did go through a stage when I was a teenager where I felt like, oh, this isn't cool, like fairies aren't cool, because we all go through some kind of rebellious stage in our lives. And in mine, it was like, oh, fairies, are they real? But I even got a fairy tattooed on my back, so they were still with me even then. But when I was a young girl, I actually bought today, this is a plant from my kitchen with a little rose on it, and it wanted to come and be with us today. So this rose just came out about a day or two ago, and I wanted to bring that just to have the rose energy with us, but to remember my grandmother as well. So I spent a lot of my younger years in her garden, and she did believe in fairies. I only found this out as an adult. I only found this out a few months ago when my mother came to stay, and she told me, because I knew that that's where my earliest memory of connecting with fairies happened, in my grandmother's garden, but I didn't know that she actually believed in fairies too. So that's really lovely. And I would be in the garden with her, and I've got photos from that time as well, my mother gave me, and I would be in the garden. She'd be pruning her roses and tending to all the flowers. And then as the rose petals fell from the flowers, as she was pruning them, I would gather them up, collect them, and put them in a pot, in a bowl, add some water, and then mush them all up. And I was making what I believed was perfume for the fairies. and it was actually rose water, but in my innocent little heart it was perfume. And I would leave it out between what we would call a liminal space, so a space between two garages, my nan's garage and the neighbour's garage, this tiny little space. I definitely couldn't get through there now. And I would leave it out, and then when I would go to check the following day, it would always be gone. So that was my offering, my gift to the fairies. It was done completely innocently from a really natural place within, playing. And actually many people say that they have done this. It's not a rare thing that I did, but it was very instinctive. I'm just going to pop this little flower down for a moment. It was very instinctive, and that's my first memory of connecting with the fairies. And I would also perceive them as little points of light dancing around, like as if they were penetrating from their veil through our veil and just showing themselves as these tiny points of very vibrant pinpricks of light, if you like. And that has stayed with me as well. So like I said, I don't know why it stayed with me. I think I've just remained very open-hearted, even though lots of things have happened in my life that could have tarnished me in a way and could have made me go inwards and could have closed my heart. But my heart has remained open, and I feel like that is a key factor in connecting with fairies and being open to them, is having an open heart and an open mind.
I love it. And could you expand a little bit more about what liminal spaces are? Is it actually the space where the veil is thinner, or are we able to connect so much better with the fairies? Or if you could explain a little bit more, like where we can find those liminal spaces and whether it's necessary. Yes, let's start from that.
A liminal space is what we would call an in-between space. And like you say, the veil would be thinner in those places. And also liminal spaces don't have to be actual physical places. They can be like, if we're going between the seasons, the equinoxes and Beltane and Samhain and the solstice, all of these points in our year are liminal spaces where one thing is crossing over to another, and it's not quite one thing and it's not quite the other thing. So it's like a fluid space energetically, and so that is an easier way for fairies and other beings as well. It's like almost like a liminal space is a portal of sorts. So it's like a portal where beings can come through and beings can go through as well. So and the liminal space between the garages, because it was in between, which is one of the definitions of liminal, that's why I say it was a liminal space. And I have no idea why I chose that space. I have no idea. It was a tiny little space between those garages, and that's just what I did instinctively. I have no idea why I did half of the things that I did.
Do you think you could describe who the fairies really are for anyone who's new to it? And well, I know you bring such beautiful wisdom from the fairies. So I'm curious if you could talk about, I know they are protectors of the land, the waters, and natural world, but I also truly believe that tapping into when we connect with fairies, we can really connect to our inner child. We can also like expand our imagination. So I'm curious, who are fairies and what connection with the fairies can do to our sense of self?
Yeah. So fairies are guardians of nature. They're guardians of the planet. They come under the named umbrella of elementals, and that covers mermaids, fairies, all types of nature spirits, all types of beings that work within the elements. And there are many different names and types, and we could, if I listed them, we would be here for a long time. So we use the word fairy or fairies for just so we know that we're talking about nature spirits, and there are different, and gnomes and elves and leprechauns, and as I say, mermaids are also included in that. So that's what they are. They're guardians of everything that grows. So in the ocean, for example, it would be guardians of the coral reefs, the waters, that sort of thing. And then on the land, it's the plants, the flowers, the trees, the crystals, the minerals. Every single thing that grows would have a fairy guardian or a nature spirit, whatever you want to label it as that kind of protector. And even this little rose that is going to come out again, this rose does have a fairy spirit with it as well. It called to me in the store. I don't usually buy many plants, but this one just really called to me, and it's been flowering every time one flower comes, and it goes and then another one comes. I know that's what plants do, but this one feels very special to me. So I will give a little example, because one day, because many people assume that fairies are small, and I did as well. I assumed that they were small, and very often they are. But one day I was driving home from the supermarket, obviously when I was an adult, and I remember that out of my peripheral vision, I noticed something, and this happened very slowly but also very quickly. You know, that feeling when something's happening fast and slow at the same time, because I was driving, I was concentrating, but I noticed something from the corner of my eye. And when I turned, I saw gigantic legs, and I was like, whoa. And I looked and I glanced up, and it was this giant tree with a giant fairy being standing next to the tree. And it all happened in what I would say a fairy flash, like very, very quick timing. It just happened so quickly. And it really shocked me, because I'd always thought that fairies were tiny. And so I came home and I meditated, and I asked the fairies, what did I just see? And they said it was a fairy. It was the fairy of the tree, the spirit of the tree. And they said that everything that grows has a guardian, as I already knew at that point. However, I didn't realize that it would be the same size as the being. So if you've got a giant tree, then you would have a giant spirit looking after it. So that's what I saw, and that it totally changed my whole perception of what fairies were, and that they are fluid, they're moving energy, they can manifest in, they're magical beings, so they can present in any way that they wish. They can project or present as points of light, or they can present in that form that we would maybe expect, like the Victoriana type fairy with little wings and a little dress and a little wand. They can do that. And they can also present in many, many different ways, but also as like leaves and twigs and creatures of the forest floor. If you look down at the forest floor, you could see leaves, and you might think, I'm sure I saw a face in that. I mean, I'm sure in your work that you do, mediumship and a psychic mediumship, that you see these faces, and I've always seen the faces. I just didn't know what they were exactly, and now I can see the spirits of the trees very clearly, and plants, I see the faces just come out, and I see the spirit of that particular thing, whatever it is growing. So they're very creative in how they present, and also sometimes it's a feeling, and we don't always see them. I don't see them all the time. I think when we do know, I don't really want to use the word believe, because belief implies an element of doubt, and there is no doubt with me, because everything that I've experienced is experiential. I've experienced it, so I'm speaking from my own knowledge, my own experience with them. However, I don't preach or try and convert anybody to believe in it. It's a very individual path. And all I'm simply doing is sharing my story of what has happened to me and my journey and my path that I've stayed on my entire life, which is incredible, really. With like I said, when I was a teenager, a couple of little deviations off that path, but it wasn't for long at all. I can't remember the question now. I kind of go off on my little tangents.
No, well, the other part, no, it's all perfect and beautiful. I was just curious how the connection with the fairy realms can change our sense of self, especially for adults who, I'm generalizing that as adults, we tend to maybe close our hearts, we tend to maybe allow the logical mind to take over. So, what does allowing ourselves to communicate with the fairies and allow to invite them into our world, what magic can be brought to our lives by that?
Yeah, okay, I remember now what you'd mentioned at the beginning about the inner child, and
Mm,
ultimately it is about keeping our hearts open and allowing, because that inner child, that child that we were, has never gone away. It's always within
mm,
us. It's just we become like a little bit hardened, but I'm speaking generally, we can become hardened by human life, by adult life, by the bills, the work, the chores, the news. All of these things can make us go more inwards and less open, less spontaneous, less childlike, not childish, childlike. So it's like having that open heart to allow that magic in. And there are some people I know who are very closed, and I can see the magic all around them, but because they're not open to it, they don't see it and they don't feel it. Or if they do, they've got such a wall around them that it doesn't
mm,
penetrate. So it is a two-way street. We do have to open to it to perceive it. The fairies do not need us to believe in them. We need them to believe in us as humans, because humanity, present company excluded, it doesn't usually respect the planet. And there's chopping down of the trees, the rainforests, polluting the oceans, and pesticides on plants, and all of these things. And ultimately, to connect in with the magic of fairies, we have to do our bit by showing them that we love and
mm,
care for the environment as much as they do. And it's really very simple. That's not actually a magical thing to do. It's a practical thing to do, because also remembering fairies, even though they're magical, they are earth. They are spirits of the earth, and we are beings of the earth. We've incarnated on this planet. So it's about realizing there's no separation. The planet will give us everything we need to survive, but very often it is overlooked, again, due to modern society. And so maybe it's about bringing plants into your home and perhaps growing your own vegetables if you're able to, or a fruit bush or a tree or something like this, and just really getting your hands back into the soil physically and metaphorically, connecting with the earth, respecting it, and then looking at ways on a very practical level that what we can do on our own doorsteps, within our own homes, even if it's just one change, swapping out a chemical cleaner for a more environmental cleaner
mm,
product. Little things. We don't have to do everything, but we can do our best, because very often people don't do anything because they think that's too much. I'm just one person. What can I do? What effect can I
mm,
have? However, we together, if we all do one little thing, we can have a huge impact on the environment. And that will energetically show the fairies that we acknowledge them, that we care for them, that we care for the planet. And then a friendship, a fairy friendship, may begin if they want to and if we want
mm-hmm.
to.
Mm-hmm. This is so important, and I love it about the fairies. Well, first of all, I love about fairies that they aren't always sugary, sweet, easygoing. Maybe it's part of my own personality, but I find it amusing. But I know some fairies are wild, fierce, and temperamental.
Yeah.
And could you speak on that? I just love the fact that it is the fairies who choose to connect with us, not the other way around. Would you be able to expand a little bit about that? Because we might set an intention, but we have to show, as you've mentioned to them, that we are connected, what truly, genuinely to the planet, that it's not a fake, shallow way of trying to bring them to our lives.
Yeah. So it's about us meeting them halfway. And it could be something in my book. It's behind me. I'll just grab it a minute just to show you the book. So in my book, Fairy Whispering, 111 Magical Practices for Connecting with the Fairies, I talk about ways that we can connect, ways that we can meet them halfway.
I think I've lost you.
And that's the fairies.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the fairies. They always come in the machine. Every single interview that I do, that will happen. I apologize on that. They're just saying we're here, like we're here, we're playing, and they are.
We've just mentioned they're temperamental.
They're cheeky. They're playful, mischievous, and they can be very fierce. And this is just kind of digressing because I'm reflecting on what's just happened. So it's people are taught in a lot of the books that are out there. We are taught to fear fairies and to not follow the music of the fairies and to not partake energetically of the fairy food and all of these things. And on a lot of levels that would be wise, because you can't just go in there with no idea about what's happening, because they can be very tricksy and playful. We've all heard, or many of us would have heard, the term of being pixie led, where you get lost, or perhaps your skirt gets caught on the brambles, or you trip up, or something like this. I had an experience that taught me about that type of energy with the fairies, and I read a book by Hamish Miller, who is no longer with us on this planet, and Paul Broadhurst, and they dowsed with divining rods across the whole of the UK, and then they went out into Europe. And I was reading one of these books, and there's this place in France called Dolmen de la Fées, which is the gathering place of the fairies. And I thought, I'm going to go there and say hello to the French fairies. And I went with my friend, my partner at the time, and we drove there in a van. And it was a long journey from the UK to there, and ferries and driving. And then it was very late at night when we approached this place that was in the middle of nowhere. And it felt a little bit, I don't want to say spooky, but a little bit unsettling, like there was a tension in the air. And we got out of the van, and then I went to walk towards it, and then I heard the loudest no, like just a really like, I was never heard like that clearly and strongly before. So it stopped me in my tracks, and I said to my partner, I said, look, we need to go back, we're not welcome here. Because usually when our intuition comes in, it's very small and gentle and quiet, but this was no, such a strong no. And I said, let's just go back and see how it feels in the morning. And I couldn't understand what was going on. I really didn't know, but I thought, we're not welcome. I said, let's just go and drive off, and then we'll come back tomorrow when it's light, because in the nighttime everything feels a little bit more spooky too. So it was all adding to this whole experience. And so we got in the van, and we drove and we drove and we drove, probably for about half an hour or so, and we came back to the same place. And I was like, this isn't happening. This is not happening. So let's try a different road. Let's try a different route. So we did it again. And again, we came back to the same place. And I said, okay, let's just park here, sleep for the night, and then we'll make a decision in the morning. Because by this time it was very late, and we were tired, and we were just literally going round in circles. So we went to sleep, but it was really playing quite heavily on my mind, this experience, because I'd expected to be welcomed with open fairy arms and yay, Karen Kay, the fairy whisperer from the UK is here. And I just had this idea of how I might be received, but it was the complete opposite of what I'd expected. So the next morning, or shall I say dawn, I heard a voice saying, you can come now. And I was so tired, and I was stirring in my sleep, and I thought, oh, I'm going back to sleep. And then I thought, no, I can't. I've been summoned by the fairies of this place. So I said to my partner, they're saying we can come now. And he's like, it's 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, yeah, but they're calling us now. We have to go. So we got out of the van, and this time everything, like the sun was just rising, and it was a very different, beautiful energy, and we felt very welcomed. And we went inside the actual dolmen stone. The dolmen de la Fée stone, it's huge, it's enormous, and we went inside it, and I meditated in there, and I asked why wasn't we welcome last night? And they said, they put it into terms that I could understand. They said, if somebody knocked on your door in the middle of the night, a stranger, somebody you didn't know, would you let them in and make them a cup of tea? And I was like, well, probably not, actually. And they said, exactly, we needed to scan you to see who you were, what your intentions were, before we welcomed you in energetically. Plus, they said, and it turned out that there had been a lot of teenagers there drinking and lighting fires and bottles in that area, so they weren't respecting it. So these fairies were really on guard. And also, rewinding a little bit to when we first arrived in the night, when I looked at the stones, I could see hundreds of these tiny little green eyes peeking out from the stones as well, which made it very scary indeed. So I was like, okay, I'll listen to that no. So the no turned into a yes, but it was on their terms. So that was my experience, but it's also an example of whenever we go into any sacred space, and to be honest, everywhere is sacred, isn't it? But spaces that are especially like ancient monuments, places like this, wells, holy wells, anything, is to just pause before we go marching in there with our big boots and kind of humanness, and just pause on the aura of that space and just ask for permission. I do that with trees as well. I love hugging trees, but I will always ask the trees permission first, because most trees love a hug. They love a human hug, and they can transmute that energy, and you can bond with them, you can ground with them. Occasionally, the tree doesn't want that. And so it's like learning to listen and trust to our own intuition, which I said, it can come across as a very small, still, very, very quiet voice, or just a feeling.
No, I love it. Yes, it's all about the mutual respect and
Yes.
respecting each other. You showed the cover of your beautiful book. Would you be able to talk a little bit about what inspired you to create this book? And perhaps you could share one or two practices that you feel are especially powerful for someone just beginning their journey.
Yeah, of course. So this book, it's dedicated to my grandmother, who introduced me to the fairies. Her name was Christabel Ellen Delamere, and interestingly, Delamere means of the sea. So that also explains my connection with the ocean and the mermaids as well. So that's really lovely. So it's dedicated to her. The idea came because so many people, through my magazine and the work that I do, have been asking me, writing to me, asking me, how can I connect with fairies? And so I knew I was going to write a book, but I wasn't quite sure what it was going to be about. I knew it was going to be about fairies, but I wasn't sure of the format. And then this idea came to have these practices. And literally the fairies gave me all of the practices. When I got to the 70th, 70, the chapter, I thought, that's it. There's no other way. There's no other ways. And I thought, oh, maybe I should change the name of the book from 101 to 70. But the book had already been announced that it was coming out in advance. And I thought, okay, fairies, you can't let me down. They're like, we won't let you down. You've just got to be patient, and you've just got to trust. And when you're asleep, we'll give you ideas in your dream time. You have to be out in nature as much as possible, and we'll give you all the ideas. And so all the ideas, all the techniques, everything in the book came through my connection with the fairies. So it's very magical the way it manifested. And one of the questions that I've been asked for years is, how can I connect with fairies?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be complex. There are more complex ways of doing it for people that are more advanced in the book. However, there are most of the chapters in the book and the practices in the book are suitable for all ages, even children, young people. It's an adult book, it's for adults, but sometimes I've heard that mothers or parents are doing some of the practices with their children, because some of them are suitable, like creating a fairy garden, simply just doing that either in your own garden or in a window box or a plant pot, and then making little signs that say fairies welcome here, which is, it's literally a sign to the fairies that we are fairy friendly. We're fairy friendly people and we welcome them. And that is a human way of expressing that. It's a very simple thing to do. So that's one of the ways. There are so many in there, I've got to think. So we can do a little tree meditation. I can guide you through that now if you like, a very, very quick one.
That would be lovely. Yes,
Yay.
please.
Okay. And I've actually, this drum doesn't come out that often. It's painted by the amazing artist Brian Froud, who he's an artist. Him and his wife Wendy Froud, they're kind of responsible for making fairies cool in this century. And he did one of the first art books of fairies with Alan Lee, not the first one in the world, because we know that there were artists back in earlier times, but they're kind of responsible for making fairies popular again in this century. So I'm going to just do a little bit of drumming, call the fairies in, and then I'll do a very short but sweet guided meditation that anyone can do anywhere. You can do it inside or outside. So what I would say first is, I always say to, before embarking on any spiritual practice, whatever it might be, whether it's with fairies or spirit guides or whatever, spiritual psychic protection is essential. So get yourself comfortable and then take a deep breath in, and breathing in love, light, joy, peace and happiness. And then breathing out any cares or concerns that you may have. And then again, breathing in love, light, joy, peace and happiness. And breathing out any residue of the day, any cares or concerns. And then again, breathing in love, light, joy and happiness. And this time breathing out love, light, joy and happiness. So we're creating a bubble, a vortex of love, light, joy, peace and happiness around us. And then visualize lots of tiny golden fairies flying in from all directions to form a 3-dimensional ball around us, a fairy ring, a virtual fairy ring in all angles and dimensions all around us, coming in to protect us. This is the fairy ring of protection. And then I'm going to call in the fairies. Calling in the fairy energy. Calling in for you, calling in for me. Calling in the fairy energy. Calling in for you, calling for me. Visualize yourself in a beautiful forest glade. The sun is shining. The birds are singing. The butterflies and insects are flying around. The air is full of fragrance, the fragrance of flowers in bloom. You feel so peaceful. You know that you are safe, protected, and loved in this space. You look around and your attention is drawn to a tree in the forest. You slowly make your way towards the tree. And just before you get near the tree, you ask the tree's permission. May I sit beside you? Wait for the tree's reply. It will usually be yes, and a very warm welcome. If it is no, then just try this practice at another time. For many of us, it will be yes. So gently approach the tree and put your arms around the tree and share energies with the tree and tune into the groundingness of this tree. Visualize the roots going down deep into the earth. Feel yourself being grounded, rooted in the earth. Stay like this for a few moments, and then turn around and sit at the base of the tree with your back against the tree trunk. Feel this powerful grounding tree energy on your spine. Feel the connection, not only to this tree, but to all of nature, to the whole forest. You feel at one with everything. Then in your mind or out loud, say the following. Fairies, fairies, come to me as I sit beneath this tree. So it is, and so may it be. And then sit in stillness for a few moments or minutes or longer and be receptive. Open your heart and your mind and try to have no preconceptions. Feel the love of nature in your heart. A sign from the fairies may appear immediately or not straight away. You might have a feeling. If you're actually out in the woods doing this, you may see an insect or a small animal acting in an unusual way. Perhaps a feather will fall. Feathers are not only gifts from angels, they can be gifts from fairies too. Be receptive to any sensations and feelings that you may be having. And then when you feel ready, feel your feet against the earth and start to wriggle your toes and wriggle your fingers and roll your shoulders and turn your head from side to side. And when you feel ready, slowly open your eyes and come back into this space. The golden fairies fly off into the distance and you feel fully grounded and present in this moment.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I felt so grounded. I always try and participate whenever I've got an occasion because it's so beautiful to be able to experience that. So thank you so much. And one thing I want to say that it's been 2 days now, I've been smelling roses. in my space. And yesterday I told my daughter, because I moved to this flat 2 years ago, and we created a stone, we painted for fairies under a tree. And yesterday I was in my garden, and then I heard you have to bring us raw honey for that conversation and interview to go ahead and for everything to work out perfectly. So I sent my daughter with raw honey, diluted with some water, and she put it by the tree. So this was our offering as well. So I've been like sensing the presence of fairies as well.
I love that. And I'm not surprised, because whenever I speak with anybody about fairies, they usually say that they've had some experience just in the lead up to the chat, the interview. And it's really lovely, because it's extra confirmation. Not that I don't need the confirmation, and I feel like you don't, but some people do need that. And I was going to say earlier as well that not everybody sees fairies. Fairies don't always present themselves to everyone. Like, they don't often present to me because I know they're there, and it takes energy for them to manifest. And of course they can do it. They're magical beings, and as I said earlier, I perceive them usually as points of light, sometimes in their full form. But the people that usually get these really big experiences can be people that don't believe in their existence, and so the fairies are saying, like, we're here, bang, and then it makes them think, and it makes them open their minds a little bit, that maybe just because it's unseen, or it's not seen all of the time, that it isn't there, because it is. And as you know, as many of us know, that the unseen world is very busy. There's a lot going on there.
It is. Karen, you've also created several beautiful oracle decks, like Oracle of the Fairies and Manifesting with the Fairies. So for someone who's new to working with fairy energy, how can using oracle cards can support and strengthen their connection, and even help enhance their intuition?
Yeah, so I found, it's funny, I've got the so I've got my Oracle of the Fairies deck here, and I will pull a little card in a moment for us. And I've also got this deck has actually just come out in a pocket size too, so it's the standard size and the small one, and I love them both, but the small one is great because I just put it in my handbag, and I've always got the cards with me when I'm out, so it just means I can do spontaneous readings, which is lovely. And I've also got my most recent deck, which is Manifesting with the Fairies. It's got a foil cover, but it's a little bit hard to see that in the light. And then I've got my Messages from the Mermaids Oracle deck as well, which I don't think is in front of me. But so I talk about it in there's a guidebook in all of my decks. I'll just find that. And I talk about how we can work with the cards to connect with fairies, and ways that we can kind of heighten our own intuition. And on the standard side cards, there's a name of the card, and then there's a little description of the energy of that card. On the pocket size, it just has the word. So in the book is all the deep explanation on it. And the reason I've done it like that, obviously for the smaller deck, there's not room to put everything on there, but on my mermaid deck as well, I have just one word, because I want people to see the word, see the image, and allow their own intuition to perceive what that message is, because no message is fixed. The cards are a guide. They're simply a guide to reflect back to us what we need to know at any given time. And I pull these. I've been pulling these cards for years. This deck came out in 2019. Yet every time a card comes out, it might be a similar message that comes through, but it's always different very often. So it's there are ways in the book, so it shows you what you can do if you don't know anything about cards or oracles. They're very gentle, so they can be forthright. You know, they can tell you how it is, what's going on, find balance or resist temptation or whatever's going on, but they are very, very gentle. So there's nothing that's going to be scary in this deck. It is simply a tool to allow your own intuition to grow, and to connect in with the fairies. And I know people say there's no power in the cards. The power is within ourselves. However, in these decks, there is definitely some power in them, because I've co-created them with the fairies. So their energy does come through. And very often these cards will fly out of the deck. Like when I'm shuffling, they usually fly out. This is a new deck that I'm shuffling. There, do you see that? It just flips over. It just comes out like that. Oh, this, I've got what I call the fairy fizzies, the goosebumps. It's tree wisdom, which is really beautiful. And this is a direct reading from the meditation, from talking about trees, about your tree and the wisdom of the trees that very often lots of people don't think about, because remember, they've been there for years, hundreds of years in some cases. So they've been grounding that area. They've been observing energetically what's going on around. So if we need to tune in to the wisdom of the trees, we can simply ask a tree. And if we can't physically get to that tree, we can tune into a tree in our mind. Obviously, being there physically is going to be more powerful, and an immediate effect will come from that connection. And again, we would meditate, we would sit by that tree or stand by the tree and just ask for the guidance from the tree, and invariably it will come. So this is very beautiful. But this card also says about, she's the fairy of the tree is playing a wooden flute. So any wooded instrument is also a pathway to the FAE. So, for example, you could just play that music. You could play or listen to, if you can't play the flute, listen to a wooden flute or any wooden instrument, and meditate or sit to that and just let that carry you, because that is carrying the vibration of the wood from the tree. Obviously, a living tree is preferable, being near that. And if you could make your own instruments from a tree, but from the naturally fallen branches, you can be creative with that, to have that tree wisdom, that tree energy with you. And automatically, when you're tuning into the tree wisdom, you are also tuning into that fairy wisdom too. So it's that's, I'm not surprised that card came out. I'll pull another little one from here, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure everyone is going to appreciate.
Yeah, and this, what I like to say as well is that it doesn't matter when you're listening to this. I don't know if you offer pre-records on this, but if somebody's listening while it's going out, or perhaps later down the line, whenever you're hearing the message is the perfect time for you to hear it. And I always say you're here for a reason, and you're hearing it for a reason. And perhaps if that message doesn't resonate, usually it does, but if it doesn't resonate at this time, it could be for someone around you. It could be like, my friend is going through that, or, it could be that as well. So the other card that's just come up is the water fairy. And she's half standing in the water, and she's on the edge of the woods, and it's hidden depths. So this is about things that could be hidden within us. It could be like things that are dormant, like that inner child. Perhaps our inner child needs to be woken up a little bit. And people might say, well, how can I do that? Well, simply play or laugh. And you might say, I don't feel like laughing. Well, just fake laugh, pretend you're laughing, and eventually that will make you genuinely laugh, because it just sounds so ridiculous when you're fake laughing. And if you can do it on your own, but you can also do it with other people, which is even funnier. That's just a way of lifting the energy, lightening the energy. It doesn't have to be heavy. Life doesn't have to be heavy. It can be fun. And I'm kind of living proof of that. At my age, I'm a mother of 2 grown men, and I'm still playing. I'm still connected into that childlike energy. And my inner child is very, very strong. However, I do still function in the world. I'm a business owner. I organise a festival. I organise a magazine. I do lots of things. I'm an author. So it's about getting that balance. Everything is about balance. So going into the hidden depths of yourself, I feel that's what this message is in this instance. It could also be something that is hidden It could be something that someone is maybe not sharing with you because they don't know how to express it. So if you feel that that could be the message for you, then just approach it. If you've got this intuition, not in a paranoid way, but just a hunch, an intuition, then just say to that person, is there anything that you'd like to share with me? Is there anything you'd like to talk about? And then be really receptive and calm and hold the space and allow them to share, because very often people don't share, or they hide things out of fear or embarrassment or some other reason that we don't know about. So holding a safe space, a sanctuary for them to share, and that will lighten them, and it will also lighten you, because that feeling of, are they hiding something from me, that will dissipate because they will feel safe to share with you. So there's a couple of messages within this particular card. There are many more, but for this purpose, there are a couple of messages. I don't want to overwhelm everybody, but ultimately allow your inner child out into the world and play.
Thank you. Beautiful messages. You've mentioned about your festival and magazine. I have to ask you about those beautiful spaces like the Three Wishes Fairy Festival and FAE Magazine, where people can share their experiences freely. Why do you feel it is so important to create safe spaces where people can reconnect to nature, fairies, and their own magic? Yes.
Yeah, it's very important, because in our everyday lives, we don't really have access to those kind of spaces where we can fully just let our hair down, put flowers in our hair, be free, dance, and just celebrate life. Because very often we're bound by the chores that we need to do as human adults. But the festival, I do other fairy events, like indoor events during the year, but the festival is an outdoor 3-day magical experience. It's like stepping into a real life fairyland. So you go in and everybody is of like mind and of like heart. It doesn't mean they all believe in fairies. It doesn't mean, some people just go because they like to dress up. Some people believe, some people don't. It's just that feeling of celebration and coming together and celebrating nature and the earth and fairies, of course. So it's and it's a plant-based event as well. So meaning that all the food that is sold on site is all vegan, and we have the best selection. Like, it always sells out, all the food, and people are like, oh, I didn't know vegan food could taste so good. It's like, yeah, it tastes amazing. And that's another way that we can show our love for the fairies as well, by choosing not to eat through destruction, but to eat through more natural means. And this isn't preaching to anybody. We're all free, we're all adults, we're able to make our own decisions in life. However, for these 3 days, it's all plant-based, and we've got like a vegan pastry cake man. We've got fairy floss, which is like candy floss but for fairies, and lots of lovely salads and juices, and hot vegan hot dogs too. Like, everything that you would want would be there. And then the creative side, the fairy market, there are people making wings. We've got a fairy fashion show, sound baths, and fairy healing, face painting. I could go on and on and on about all the things that are there. But also we have this fairy school, but it's like a play school, and it's a dome, a big dome that we sit in, and everybody comes in and shares. There are workshops, talks, activities, and music, and all of that is included in the ticket. So you buy your ticket to come into the festival, and then you have access to over 100, more than 100 activities, talks, and workshops. So you have the choice to go to anything, to partake in anything. Because as a parent, I remember when my sons were little, and you would go into somewhere and you pay to go in, and then you've got to pay again when you're in, and you've got to, and it just gets bigger and bigger, but everything is included except the food. Obviously you have to buy your own food when you're in there, but all the activities are all included. And then we have a main stage inside a big circus tent to protect us from the sun and the rain if it rains, with live music all the way through, all different musical tastes. all dancing, celebratory, and it is just a celebration of fairies and the land and coming together, because also people don't tend to socialize in family groups a lot. It's not as common, and in going back, then we would have been brought up in clans or tribes of family units with an elder, and everybody would be there. But now everybody's sectioned off into their own little houses, whereas the festival is like just bringing everyone together, and there's something for the adults, something for the children. It's just everything where we can all socialize and celebrate in that place. You can tell I get very excited when I talk about it, because I love it so much. It's a lot of work organizing it, but it is one of my favorite times of the year. So that is at the beginning of August that takes place at a place called Garslade Farm near Glastonbury, at a place called Godney. So we can see Glastonbury Tor from the festival site and the campsite. So we're in the aura of Glastonbury Tor, which is a very magical place. And yeah, the website for that is simply fairyfestival.co.uk if you want to find more about that. But also on my own website, I have links to everything that I do, which is karenkay.co.uk. And the magazine as well. So that's born from, so the first fairy ball that I organised was in 2006, and this community, it was so we did have social media, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. And all these people came out of the woodwork from under their rocks, and just, I was like, how did everybody find out about it? It was all word of mouth, and it sold out. That very first event sold out, and I remember just thinking, well, there's this community. And I'd worked in journalism. Used to work for the BBC. Believe it or not, I used to like read the news and do like stuff on the news. It's very different from what I do now. And I had these skills, these journalistic skills, but I didn't work in the news environment anymore. And I thought I can put these skills to use within and create a fairy. It was a fanzine initially, just a little publication for the community, telling them what events were on, fairy fashion, folklore, art, all of these things. And then I was contacted by a publisher in America who wanted to distribute the magazine. So it's distributed all over the world. It hasn't come out for about half a year now, so the publications have become less frequent, but it is still going. And people contribute, send in their stories, their photo shoots and fashion and events and folklore stories. So it's like a hub, a physical hub. So for people that can't physically get to the events, or it's accessible for everyone wherever you are in the world.
I love it. And finally, from your perspective, what is the greatest lesson that the fairies want humanity to remember right now? Yeah, in general, I just don't want to be more specific.
Yeah, so that's a very powerful question. The overriding message, irrespective of all the beauty and the magic and the joy that we can have when we connect with the fairies and manifest with the fairies, the overriding message is to reconnect with the earth, reconnect with the land, respect the land, honor the land. We don't worship fairies. We don't need to worship anyone. It's literally about honoring and respecting the land that is giving us so much. And that is what the fairies do as guardians of the land, of guardians of the earth. And they just wish for us to do the same. And that will strengthen our connection with the fairies. And then after that happens, that's when all the magic and all the fun and the joy comes in. But we have to be practical with this and really think, like everybody listening right now, what is one thing that you can do to impact the earth in a positive way? It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It can be a tiny little thing. It could be, I'm going to put a little bag in my bag when I go out and pick up some litter. It could be as simple as that, caring for the earth in whatever way you can.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much for this conversation. It feels like such a gift to have you part of the retreat, and I truly believe that you have reminded so many people, including myself, to remember that magic, connection, and wonder are part of our human experience. And also, I think you've touched upon something important, that it's all about opening our hearts if we have not kept them opened, and the fact that Earth is alive, the magic is real, and our imagination is just sacred. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you. Thank you so much as well for inviting me. I'm very blessed and honoured to be a part of this magical retreat with so many other wisdom sharers and wisdom keepers, and yourself for holding the space, for making this possible. So thank you. And yeah, if anybody would like to find me on social media, I share every day, pretty much every day, and I am Karen K Fairy on all of the social media channels. So it would be really lovely to connect. And if you did see me here and you follow me, send me a message and say hi, because I really do love speaking to people about fairies, especially.
Thank you once
Thank you.
more, and thank you to all of the viewers who are watching it, whether live or on a replay. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.